6 sustainable self-care tips for teachers. Today, we are talking with 20-year veteran teacher, Stephanie Dorsey. This is episode 786, sponsored by Advancement Courses. This does include some recommended classes from Advancement Courses and is sponsored by them. All opinions are my own. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn how to get 20% off your professional development with Advancement Courses.
This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with your host, Vicki Davis.
So let's start, Stephanie. Everybody keeps saying, teachers, you need to take care of yourself, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. And then you teach all day long and you're subbing for everybody and you lose all your planning period and you're working late and you take work home and you're exhausted. Like, where do we start?
I definitely feel like that is something that we're always told as teachers. You have to take care of yourself. You have to work out. You have to eat better. But in actuality, it's like, do we take ourselves out of the picture of other people's lives? Like, we encompass so many responsibilities as teachers. We're caretakers to students. We're supportive to our colleagues. We have families. We have other responsibilities. And how do we prioritize? And that's really where I have found that when I'm looking at self-care is what can I do in bite sizes? Attack everything. Like, yes, I know I need to eat better, but when I go to the teacher's lounge, that cookie looks darn good. And maybe I need that little sugar to give me energy for my next class. But don't feel guilty about that. So that is one thing. Prioritizing yourself, that is my first tip, is saying to yourself, what do you need in that moment that is going to work for you and that you can keep doing? So first, prioritizing small little things. So what I mean about that is don't look at, okay, maybe I do need to eat better, but what can I change during the day? Like maybe instead of I want that cookie, maybe during the lunchtime, instead of meeting a student, I'll take that time for myself and walk with a colleague, walk around the gym. Because we know as teachers, physical activity is important, right? It keeps our mind engaged. It keeps us sharp. But we got to be sharp with those kids in those classrooms. That physical activity is important. But again, don't let that define you. So if you create a habit, make sure it's something that you can do. And I learned that a lot. I had a struggle being a 20-year special education teacher of taking that time, and it hurt my health. And so I took a self-care class and the self-care strategies and like how to balance that. We wear so many hats that I'm like, how do I take care of myself when I want to take care of everybody else, including my family that I was neglecting, like bringing my homework home, and my homework meaning grading or my IEPs. So how did I stop that? For me, and I'm going to say this, is really looking at your time. And I did this wheel of time where I put in my whole day, what I did when I woke up to when I went to bed. And I put it in categories of, is this emotionally good for me? Am I physically doing it? This is mental. Like what is this doing for me every day? Is it reducing my stress? Is it making me finish things quicker? I had to really think about that. But I think as a teacher, we do that very well for others. We help others prioritize themselves, help others be efficient during the day, but we have to take that time for us.
As you already know, because we've talked about this, somewhere in 2020, I broke my foot and I was so busy taking care of distance learning, taking care of the kids, taking care of all the teachers that I did not stop and get it seen about. And as we're recording this yesterday, I'm just now back in shoes, which is awesome for me. But I had surgery February 25th of 2022, and I could not walk again until May 4th of 2022. So I had 10 weeks of not walking, 3 weeks in school where I couldn't walk. And it was because I didn't stop to take care of myself. And one thing I have learned is, for example, now, if I'm exhausted, I go to sleep. Like what kind of good am I doing myself sitting there looking at work for kids and nodding off and fighting the sleep and drinking coffee at 11 o'clock at night so I can stay up till 3 and grade? That is not sustainable. So I think we just have to draw those lines and say, you know what? Doctor visit has to happen. Everything else will happen. But if I'm dead or if I'm at home not walking, I can't do everything else. And I think that's what all of us as teachers have to understand, is that we have a choice to make and nobody is going to make it for us. We have to make it for ourselves. And that is, I need to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to the doctor. I need to take a walk. I'm going to take a walk. I need to eat. I need to go to bed. All of those decisions, I think, are really important.
Yeah. And I think that's step one, is knowing your worth. Like, that is something that is the hardest thing, being very self-aware of that. Like, you knew you were injured, but you didn't put yourself first. You walked on it, and now you're steps back from before, right? Or are you walking?
I actually ran a half marathon on it.
So you even took it to where you did something that you wanted to do, but were injured.
I was injured. Yeah. And we do that though. As teachers, we are just so used to just push. And then there's another piece I know that you're getting ready to talk about is I ran because it was how I handled stress.
Yes. And the stress, those are the triggers, right? Like we talk about, there's these triggers. We know it could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a situation. My trigger was always right before an IEP meeting. So my trigger is I didn't sleep well. I was thinking too much. Like you, I had to start doing some rituals, some habits to prevent me from being at the highest level of my stress before an IEP level. So I knew what triggered me. It was those meetings. Even though I knew I was going to be fine, I still kept working on it and working on it to a point where my colleague was like, Stephanie, it's fine. You're ready. Stop adding more. Stop doing more. Get some rest. So she suggested for me is to start keeping a journal by my bed. So I kept a journal by my bed, and I do that now, and I consistently do that. If I have something this is funny, I'm going to go see the Strawberry Moon, and I'm going to kayak. I know how to kayak, but I'm stressed because it's at night. Last night I couldn't sleep on it, so I was in my journal just writing like positive things. So good self-talk, right? So that's part of when you have a trigger, how to de-escalate yourself. So I use a journal. I do positive self-talk, but those are all things you have to learn how to do. So last night I was like writing in my journal. My husband was like, why is the light on? It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, I have to get this out of my system. I'm paddling in the dark soon. It's kind of like that. I think we have to understand what triggers us. And it could be simple as we're starting an hour later today at school, right? Like, well, I guess it was like flex days where we could start later. That actually, some teachers, that really throws them off because they have rituals and they have routines, and now everything's moved back an hour. So I would look at your calendar, like when those flex hours come, and say to yourself, what could I do to prepare me differently that day? How will I react to it? Because again, we're very proactive. Teachers really do look ahead, and we are flexible. But when we have routines that we're used to and you change our routine, we stress and it does trigger us. So we have to think about those triggers. And a lot of times when I ask people, and again, this is something I learned in kind of looking at setting boundaries, is that also is a trigger, that we like to say yes to everything, right? Like we don't want to say no. First of all, we feel guilty. Let's be honest. It's teacher guilt. We all have that. But I think understanding, like for triggers too, you have to be very clear in your intention. Like, is it something that is prioritized something high, or is it just something that you created in your head that's a high priority? So like really looking at that trigger and asking yourself those specific questions. How can I better approach things when those happen?
Okay. So first you had prioritizing yourself and setting up those wellness routines. Second is understanding your stress triggers, which we've all got to understand those, cope with them appropriately. I journal also. Journaling has just been such an important part of my whole life and highly recommend that. What's your third?
So mindfulness. And I know we hear this for students. We're always like, teach mindfulness. You might not know it now, but you will know it. We teach kids to talk like that all the time. But do we really practice what we preach? So one thing about mindfulness, and I have a hard time with this. Like my husband, he loves yoga, loves it. I don't like yoga, but I love meditation. And meditation is a great way to refocus yourself. I took the Staying Mindfulness course with learning and teaching, and it taught me a lot of really cool techniques that I was like, no, that's not for me. You know, I don't want to meditate. I don't want to practice my breathing. I found out mindfulness breathing is really a great strategy, like actually taking in those deep breaths.
Is it in through your nose or in through your mouth?
I'm a mouth breather. So I was like, I can't breathe. I'm always like, if I'm up, I'm like holding my breath. It was teaching you how to breathe through your nose and then exhale through your mouth. So it was like that, and doing it in a 3-minute. And then this other one I did was with music, where it was like you did these sounds with your breathing and it was all through your mouth. And so it's just different techniques and when to do it. And I was thinking, oh, I should do breathing techniques to help me sleep. Actually, breathing techniques are better for you like in the morning or like right before you're doing something like strenuous activity, like to prepare you, to refocus you. It re-energizes you. I was doing Common Happy Teacher, and one of the videos was showing breathing that you could do with students. And they were talking about teachers using it. It was talking about sleep and don't do it before sleep. Okay, I won't do it before sleep. And I did. And I was wide awake. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, I finally got energy now. I didn't have it all day. And also, it's your self-talk. So mindfulness of talking, like trying to think of 3 positives in your day. And I even do Post-it notes on my desk. I still do that too. And I do Post-its of like things that I hear from others or something that will make me laugh that I can remember later. Just something that keeps you in that mindset of not looking at the negative. Let's focus on the positive. And it's hard at times.
No, but mindfulness is so important, understanding how to breathe. And these are things you can use with students. When my students are stressing with tests, I'll come and they'll say, Miss Davis, will you do that relaxation thing? And I'll do it. And they'll just be like, oh, I feel so much better. So this is something we can teach the kids when we take a class and we learn how to do it for ourselves. Right. Okay. So our third then is learning mindfulness and mindfulness activities. What is our fourth?
So the fourth one I have is the pause time and reflect. So this is where you're looking at saying no kindly to people. Like we're yes people as teachers. You need to ask yourself, what does this person really need? What else can this person's needs be met? And how can I support this person to have that need met? So I started doing this because I'm a yes girl. So I would be like, oh, of course I can do that. Go out to lunch with the student and have them make up that test. And then that way you don't have to worry about it later in the week with the students. But remembering, who does that benefit? Does that benefit the student who needs a break at lunch? You need a break at lunch. Is the student even ready for that? Is it meeting their needs to take a test after they've been out sick? So thinking about the actual task and setting those in your mind, is this okay to say no right now? Because that's the biggest thing. Like we as teachers want to support each other, but the pause, buy time, and reflect is really about listening to what the actual need is. And then I like to say, what can I think about it? Can we come back and talk about this? I need time to see, does this fit in my day? So not always being reactive of, yes, I'll do it, and not think about how is it going to impact your day when you say yes.
Sometimes we have to say no. One thing for me is I had to realize that if I say yes and I do not have the time to do it, I'm actually lying and I'm not keeping promises to somebody. And that's not good. I mean, if we've already committed ourselves to other tasks and we don't have the capacity to say yes to somebody else, that's just not something we can do. Okay, so that's a really important thing. What's our fifth?
So I definitely want to talk about the clear intentions. Like we need to take a few moments to think about our plan and how we're going to show up to things. That's where a lot of times that keeping your structure of your day is important, to understand like, when is this time that I need to do this? And to be mindful of what's your intention before and after those interactions. So clear intentions is a way to help reduce that stress and to keep you on track. I like to say on track. I know people might not agree with that, but I think at times we can be thrown for the day. Like we have intentions of, okay, I know today I set, I'm going to grade this, but I'm not bringing it home. And then again, someone comes in my office and wants to have a chat. I don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm going to listen and I'm going to be there for my colleague because community is important. But at the same time, now I put myself back, right? Now I'm like, oh, do I stay after school later or do I come in earlier? So it's really understanding what is your commitment to your day. Like, how do you see your day and can you commit to that? And is that sustainable? So with clear intent, I like to tell people, remind yourself of that, what you wanted to do before and during that interaction.
That's fantastic. Okay, so what's our last one?
I think it's important that we not only understand that we're in this together. Like we're all going through this, that teachers look at each other and support each other. And we know that the outside is not always looking at us at the same way. And to understand that it's okay to ask for help. If you're willing to give that time to listen, don't take it though. There's this great activity I learned is staying present, was how you really work with your colleague. If they tell you something, it's not to take that burden and put it back on you, like this beach ball activity we did. So like you handed me the beach ball. Instead, I'm helping you get the beach ball off of your back and out and drop it. And maybe I'm helping you by directing you the right direction. We both have this presentation. I know that you're saying your part is really hard to do right now. Do you want to switch? Problem solve. Support your colleagues. Don't take on their responsibilities, but maybe help them adjust what those responsibilities are. Because again, we don't want to put more on your plate, but we also want to be there for our colleagues. And I also think as a community, we look from the top down, right? If our leaders are there for us and they are taking those times, right, to come in our classroom and be intentional with their feedback, that's helpful. Teachers, we like to have a voice. When we're given things and we had no input, that's a huge piece too. So thinking about the community itself, it's all the parties, right? How we all work together. It's from the secretary who helps you with your field trip. How do you make her life good? Does she get overwhelmed every day? So I think remembering that we're all in it for the same purpose and the same passion. And if we can support each other, that's really important.
And Stephanie, I'm going to have you mention briefly, what are some classes that teachers can take related to self-care? And again, this is, of course, with advancement courses where I take my classes.
The courses I talked about are the ones I've taken. So I've taken the self-care strategies for teachers, creating work-life harmony in teaching, staying present, mindfulness for better teaching and learning, and creating meaningful relationships and setting boundaries for your students.
Those are some great classes, and these are some great tips. So thank you, Stephanie. And educators, as we look towards the next school year, setting those boundaries, living life differently. I know I am. I've had more than a wake-up call that if I'm going to have this profession, that I've got to prioritize myself, and I'm the only one who can say yes or no for myself. So if I end up with too much on my schedule, it's really, in the end, my fault. And yes, there have been times that I've had to sit down and have conversations with leaders and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and it feels like too much. What is important to you that is on my list? And if they say everything, and that's happened to me before too, they say everything is important. And that was when I looked for a different school, because it was not sustainable for me to exist in the world and to do as much as was on my plate. But I do love teaching. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for this conversation. I hope this will help so many of our teachers who are listening from around the world. Thanks, Stephanie. In today's show, all of us teachers learned more about taking care of ourselves. We also learned about many courses from Advancement Courses, which has over 280 online graduate level PD courses in not only self-care, but topics for every grade level and subject area. Plus, their courses are self-paced with up to 6 months to complete them. So go to advancementcourses.com/coolcat and get your 20% discount by entering the code CAT20 and sign up for your summer PD now. This time last summer, I was taking a course in computer science that helped me implement a new course and curriculum at our school. So I highly recommend advancementcourses.com/coolcat and use the code CAT20.
You've been listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. If you like this program, you can find more at coolcatteacher.com. If you wish to see more content by Vicki Davis, you can find her on Facebook and Twitter under Cool Cat Teacher. Thank you for listening.